Senator Cassidy.
Ms. Figo, I'm a doc who took care of the uninsured for many years. Thanks for putting a human face on that which otherwise could be abstract and
Thank you for
try.
having me.
Secondly, rarely do I enjoy being the very last of a long series of questioners, but I learned from all, so I appreciate that. Peter, great to work with you on the Netflix model. It's a silver buckshot. It's a piece of buckshot that hopefully will help. Several things. Mr. Holtz-Eakin, or Dr. Holtz-Eakin, you had mentioned, obviously you have a problem with international reference pricing. I actually put that on my website about 8 months ago, suggesting it, and I was amazed that the administration brought it up because it seemed so aggressive. So I'm going to explore that a little bit with you. Peter Bach, just before he disagreed with you, made the point that the issue is sole source drugs for which there is no competitor and there is no ability for the PBM to leverage a rebate. So what do we do about those? If it's that subgroup of international reference pricing for which there is a rich, wealthy country which has it, and I accept the limitations that you point out. We also have Croatia, for example, Slovenia. But if we just took Italy, Germany, Great Britain, France, and Canada, why should we be paying so much more than just those countries, for example? And if not, what is the alternative mechanism to lower the price? And by the way, secondly, I was intrigued by what Dr. Miller said, maybe baseball-style negotiation for those which are not also in other countries. But your thoughts, because I respect you so much, I'd appreciate that.
So I think you read the testimony very carefully, and so there are reservations about sort of how that actual index was constructed in the proposal, and some of the countries we end up referencing against being much poorer and probably not good.
But if we just exclude those,
did what you did, I hear you on that. Then you get to the second step of this, which is just a decision people are going to have to make, right? The target is to get prices 30% below where they are now. That's what the indication would be, and the data is that of the 27 drugs they looked at, 11 of them, only 11, are available in all those countries.
But if we took out those 11, so we say, okay, for those 11 we shall apply, but for the other we shall have a different mechanism. Again, I think baseball-style negotiation is intriguing. It's just the first time I heard about it. But.
So I'm not opposed. I actually think, let me back up and just say, I thought it was an interesting proposal, and I think the reflexive condemnation of it by some people on the grounds that it was intervening in the market and not free market and all that is a mistake. We don't have a free market that works real well in drugs, so let's look at different mechanisms. I'm not a big fan of this one for some of these reasons. I do think there's a general problem in being concerned about access to medicines. The United States has a tradition and values access to the most recent therapies. These other countries have very different traditions, and there isn't access.
But on the other hand, we would still pay more than other countries.
We are paying more than other countries, and we're footing the globe's bill for R&D, and that's not okay. I get that.
So let me just toss out something else to you all. A drug that really bugs me is Duexis. Okay, it's 40. If I went to the pharmacy, bought $40 worth of ibuprofen and of Pepsid, combined them, and then sold them for $2,400, which is what happens with Duexis. I don't know what share of that goes to the PBM, but I think that kind of exposes the problem of the rebate system, because it may be only $40 going to the pharmaceutical company, but we are paying $2,400 a month for $40 worth of drugs. Now, to me, that particular drug seems to be drafting in on the protection we give for innovation. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that intrigues me is the Australian model, where there's some third party which does an assessment as to the relative value of a drug. If you want to pay more than that, you can, but you're only going to get compensated this much. You want to charge more, then the patient shall pay more. Not to do that for the truly innovative, because Dr. Miller, you point out we want to continue to incentivize the truly innovative, but for that which is just drafting in on regulations designed to promote innovation. Any thoughts about that idea?
So I think this is out of the category of alternatives that people are interested in, where you're actually going to reward on value, and there's little value in the combination of these two drugs. And so the issue becomes, how do you identify value and reimburse on it? There are these outcome-based models where the outcome's going to be no better than $40 worth of drugs, or there are these others where you have third-party validators and identify value at the point of launch. Peter's mentioned some of those. Those are different alternative mechanisms that are worth thinking about in this space, because we do have to figure out what to do in those situations where there doesn't appear to be any value and there's not a lot of competition.
Gentlemen, any other thoughts? Actually, let me hold off on that because I got just a second more to go. Now, Cornyn asked about why do we have rebates? I read a nice article by Scott Gottlieb that once pointed out that we had rebates because there's a lawsuit by independent pharmacies that suggested that the chains were getting a better deal. And so the way they worked around the lawsuit is to give rebates on the back end. But as I mentioned, there is no reason for a PBM, which is getting a large rebate from the makers of Duexis, not to carry Duexis, even though the value of Duexis is at best marginal relative to $40 worth of dollars, $40 worth of medicine. So let me ask you this, on the rebate issue, what if we limited rebates to 10 to 20%, and others will suggest we lose leverage on the part of the plans. So what if you limited the rebates to 10 or 20%, or pick a number, some percent, and the rebate could not be over that, which would still give a margin for the plan to negotiate a lower price based upon volume, but it would not give this situation of insulin where we might have a drug which at net price to the manufacturer is still $100, for example, but the price to the patient is $400 and $300 are going into a rebate system.
So let's just focus on the issue. The issue is there value to having an entity, currently called a PBM, that collects covered lives and negotiates on their collective behalf to get better deals? Yes. And those entities have delivered a lot of value in the system. How do you reward them for that value? Well, the current system with the after-the-fact rebates rewards them for that value, but you could reward them in other ways. You could write them checks at the beginning of the year and say, go negotiate. We got 900,000 people. Go.
So you're suggesting just outlaw them, but I just say that.
No, I'm not outlining the PBMs. I'm saying you could
outlaw the
reimburse
rebate.
differently. Yes.
Outlaw the rebate. I think PBMs have an important function.
Yes.
But I will tell you, Mark McClellan, I think, has told me personally, if I can quote Mark, that rebates are important, and he would be reluctant to get rid of them. What if we limit them?
I mean, my reaction to the limiting is that you're moving more to a fee-based system, and you could have a performance-based fee. And to Doug's point, you're looking at overall spend and say, here's your fee, but if you lower my overall spend by X, then you'll get a bump up in your fee. But it's not tied to the specific distribution of individual drugs, and you get the kind of circumstances that you're speaking to.
Senator
I'm sort of agreeing and just taking it a little bit different, and I'm stopping.
I'm sorry, this chair has been, we have one more person, the chair has been forbearing. I apologize. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Thank you, ma'am.